What happens when the world's most scrutinized celebrity sits across from one of daytime TV's most unfiltered hosts, and the cameras catch every second of the collision? Before we dive into this explosive moment, hit that subscribe button to talk flair, like this video, and drop a comment right now. Because what unfolds next is something you'll want to witness from start to finish. The lights above the set of The View hummed faintly, a soft electrical buzz that somehow blended with the restless chatter of the live audience. The studio felt tighter today, the air thick with anticipation. Everyone knew Kim Kardashian was the guest. Everyone also knew Joy Behar had a reputation for poking the bear until it roared. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what was about to happen. The cameras slid across the sleek studio floor like silent predators. Producers whispered into earpieces. The audience settled. And then, as the theme music faded, the chaos began with a deceptively calm smile. Kim Kardashian walked onto the stage in a fitted cream suit, elegant and composed, but her eyes carried that familiar weight. The weight of every headline, every rumor, every dissected moment of her life. She offered a polite wave to the audience, who erupted with cheers, some excited, some curious, some already sensing that today's interview wasn't going to be another harmless celebrity appearance. Joy Behar leaned forward in her chair, a look in her eyes that blended amusement and something sharper. "Well, Kim, we're glad you're here," she said, her tone unusually sweet. "You've certainly been busy. And controversial." Kim gave a small laugh, trying to keep it light. "I guess that comes with everything I do. But you choose that life," Joy shot back almost instantly. "You choose to put everything out there. So shouldn't you expect people to question it?" A quiet ripple moved through the audience, half gasps, half murmurs of, "Oh, she's starting early." Kim blinked, momentarily thrown off. "I share my life, yes. But that doesn't mean everything you read is the truth, or that I should be attacked for things taken out of context." Joy crossed her arms, her expression shifting. "But isn't that the brand? The drama? The spectacle? I mean, let's be real here. You've made a career out of attention." The other hosts offered uneasy glances. They knew Joy could push. But this felt pointed. Kim inhaled slowly, choosing her words carefully. "I've built businesses. I've worked hard. There's a difference between attention and ambition." Joy didn't budge. "Come on, Kim. You know the public sees you as someone who's famous for being famous." The audience reacted again, some laughing softly, some shaking their heads, sensing the tension sharpening. Kim's smile faltered, just for a second. Then she straightened her posture. "People are allowed to underestimate me. They've done it my whole life. It doesn't mean they're right." Joy's tone turned sharper. "But do you ever take responsibility for the machine you created? The influence? The controversies? Or is it always someone else's fault?" That was the line. The room seemed to freeze. Even the camera operators paused for a heartbeat. Kim's jaw clenched. She opened her mouth, but before she could respond, Joy continued, doubling down. "Like your recent public statements. You say you're misunderstood, but every time, it feels like you're playing victim. Is that intentional? Or just convenient?" The audience let out a collective, stunned "oh." Even the other hosts shifted uncomfortably, one of them lightly clearing her throat as if trying to offer an escape route Kim wasn't getting. Kim finally spoke, her voice tighter now. "Joy, I'm not here to fight with you. I can take criticism, but questioning my intentions as a person. I'm questioning consistency," Joy cut in, "because the pattern is always the same." Kim's composure began to crack, not dramatically, but in small fractures. Her fingers tightening around the arm of her chair, her eyes darting briefly toward the audience as if grounding herself. The cameras zoomed in, sensing the moment. "Do you know what it's like," Kim said softly, "to have millions of people judge every move you make? Every word you say? Every mistake from 10 years ago thrown back in your face like it happened yesterday?" Joy shrugged. "That's called fame, sweetheart." A sharp gasp echoed through the audience. Kim blinked fast. "I'm not your sweetheart." Joy smirked. "Touchy, aren't we?" A silence followed, a heavy, painful silence that stretched across the studio. Kim looked down for a moment, gathering herself. When she looked back up, her eyes were shining, not yet tears, but dangerously close. "I came here to talk about my work, my projects, my life beyond what tabloids write. But it feels like you already decided who I am." Joy opened her mouth, but for the first time, she hesitated. Something about the quiver in Kim's voice seemed to pull the moment into a different direction. The audience watched, locked in the tension. Kim leaned forward slightly, her voice trembling. I'm a mother. I'm a businesswoman. I'm trying to grow, to evolve. But I can't do that if people like you keep trying to put me into a caricature. Joy's face softened briefly, but only briefly. Kim, we ask hard questions on this show. You know that. There's a difference between hard questions and belittling, Kim whispered. The words seemed to hang in the air, fragile and heavy. One of the other hosts finally stepped in. Ladies, let's take a breath. But the breath never came, because Joy, perhaps realizing she'd been momentarily softened, instantly reverted, firing one more question that struck like glass shattering on a tile floor. Then why do you keep selling the narrative that you're the victim, Kim? That you're misunderstood? Isn't that, at some point, manipulative? It happened fast. Too fast for anyone to stop. Kim's face hardened, then crumpled. Her eyes filled instantly. She tried to blink them away, tried to hold herself together under the blazing studio lights, but it was too late. A tear slipped down her cheek, catching the reflection of the cameras. The audience gasped again, some leaning forward, some covering their mouths. Kim Kardashian, poised, polished, endlessly controlled, was breaking down on live television. She lifted a hand, trying to wipe her tears discreetly, but the cameras were already locked onto her. The room was silent except for the shaky exhale she tried to hide. I'm not manipulating anyone, she whispered. I'm just exhausted. Joy froze. She hadn't expected this. No one had. The moment stretched, raw and unfiltered, as Kim struggled to steady her breath, her voice, her dignity. And then, suddenly, the producer's voice echoed from offstage. Cut to break, but the damage had already been done. The world had just witnessed the crack in the armor, and the real storm was only beginning. The commercial break lights washed over the studio in a harsh red glow, signaling chaos behind the scenes. Crew members rushed toward the stage, whispering urgently into headsets. The audience didn't know whether to talk, stay silent, or simply process what they'd just seen. Some leaned into each other. Some stared wide-eyed at the now-frozen set where Kim Kardashian sat motionless, one hand over her face, trying to steady the tremble in her breath. Joy Behar stood up immediately the moment cameras cut, adjusting her glasses, shaking her head as if trying to dismiss the weight of what had just happened. I didn't think she'd cry, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for the nearby crew to hear. One of the producers hurried over, his voice tight with concern. Joy, we need to. I ask legitimate questions, Joy snapped quickly, folding her arms. Since when is that a crime? But she's upset, the producer replied gently, glancing toward Kim, who still sat hunched, trying to compose herself. We can't have this escalate on live TV. Please, just be careful when we come back. Joy gave a dismissive wave, but there was something else in her expression now. A flicker of uncertainty, perhaps even regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Meanwhile, Kim inhaled shakily. Her makeup artist rushed to her side with tissues and a small compact, whispering softly, Kim, breathe. Just breathe. You're okay. Kim's voice was barely audible. I didn't want to cry. Not here. Her assistant crouched down beside her. You're human. That's allowed. Kim looked up, eyes still glistening. The set lights reflected off her tears like tiny sparks. They'll twist this, she murmured. Everyone watching, they'll say I'm being dramatic. They'll say I did it on purpose. No, the assistant replied firmly. They saw what happened. But Kim wasn't convinced. She never was, not when the world had a long history of turning her every vulnerable moment into ammunition. At the opposite end of the stage, the co-hosts whispered among themselves. Whoopi, appearing more subdued than usual, shook her head. That went too far, she muttered. Sunny sighed. Joy pushes, but Kim didn't deserve that. Sarah rubbed her arms as if chilled. The audience felt it. You could hear it. It was too real. The stage manager called out, 30 seconds. Back in 30 seconds. Kim straightened instantly, wiping away any lingering tears. Her composure snapped back into place like a soldier preparing for battle, but the fragility still lingered beneath the surface. Her eyes remained soft, wounded. Joy returned to her seat, glancing briefly at Kim. It wasn't quite an apology, but it wasn't her usual confidence either. Still, she sat upright, adjusting her mic, ready to continue the show as if nothing had shaken her. 10 seconds. Kim exhaled, fixing her posture. 5, 4, 3, 2. The cameras clicked back on. The View studio transformed once again into the polished TV world, where emotions are framed by angles and measured in ratings. Whoopi spoke first, her voice gentler than usual. Welcome back to The View, everyone. We're having a heartfelt conversation with Kim Kardashian today. Kim forced a small, steady smile, though the vulnerability still clung to her like a second skin. Joy remained silent for a beat, her eyes scanning Kim's face. And then, against expectation, she spoke. "Kim," she said, her tone noticeably softer, "I wasn't trying to upset you." The audience watched closely, leaning in like they were witnessing a high-stakes negotiation. Kim met Joy's gaze, eyes still shimmering faintly. "I know this is your job," she replied softly. "I know you ask tough questions. But it felt like you weren't asking to understand me. You were asking to corner me." Joy inhaled sharply, but didn't interrupt this time. Kim continued, her voice fragile yet steady. "People think I'm bulletproof. They think things don't affect me. But I'm still a person. I have feelings. I care. And sometimes it hurts." The room fell silent again. Joy cleared her throat. "Look, Kim, I criticize people. That's part of what I do. And I criticize the system, fame, celebrity culture. But maybe you're right. Maybe that criticism came off harsher than intended." A murmur traveled through the audience. Joy Behar, offering something that edged dangerously close to accountability? That was a moment in itself. But then Joy added, unable to stop herself, "Still, some of what I asked is valid." The moment shattered like glass. Kim's face tightened. "Joy, you don't get to justify making me feel small." Whoopi immediately intervened. Okay, let's stay grounded here." Joy exhaled through her nose, trying again. "Fine. I'm just saying, my questions weren't meant to attack your character." "Well, they did." Kim's voice was barely above a whisper, but the impact landed with precision. Joy's expression wavered, the tension returning. "I'm trying here," Joy said, her voice surprisingly strained. "But this show isn't." Kim interjected, her voice trembling again. "You act like my entire life is just a punchline. But I've dealt with real things. Real pain. Real struggles. I'm not just a name you can toss around because it's convenient." Something in Joy's face shifted. A crack. Not anger, something more complex. Something like realization. The audience sat frozen, caught between breath and disbelief. Kim's voice grew softer, but more emotional. "Do you know how hard I work to hold myself together? To not let people see when I'm overwhelmed? And today I slipped. And now millions are watching." Joy stared at her, momentarily speechless. Sunny leaned in gently. "Kim, no one thinks less of you for showing emotion." Kim swallowed. "The internet will." A ripple of sympathy moved through the studio. Joy finally spoke, slower this time. "Kim, I didn't mean for it to go this far." But Kim didn't respond right away. Her eyes lowered, her breath shaking again, the exhaustion carrying a weight that pulled the entire room down with it. Whoopi stepped in, guiding the moment before it spiraled further. "Let's talk about what brought you here today. Your new work, your projects, what's next for you. Because despite everything else, you deserve to share that." Kim nodded slightly, grateful for the redirect, though her voice still wavered as she spoke about her businesses and future goals. But even as she talked, the shadows of the earlier confrontation clung to every word. Joy remained mostly silent, watching Kim with a conflicted expression. Part guilt, part frustration, part something unspoken. And though the interview continued, the tension never fully left the room. Because everyone could feel it. The emotional wound was open. The world had seen it. And the fallout was only beginning to spark. The interview continued, but the energy inside the studio had shifted into something unsteady, like a glass perched too close to the edge of a table. Every word Kim spoke carried a tremor. Every glance she cast toward Joy was careful and guarded. The audience sensed it, the fragility, the quiet storm still swirling beneath her efforts to remain composed. Joy sat stiffly, her hands folded, her eyes flicking between Kim and the floor as if unsure of where to land. She had never struggled with her words before. Joy Behar, sharp, fearless, unapologetic, looked strangely unsettled. And yet, the tension in her jaw said she wasn't done. Not entirely. When Kim finished speaking about her upcoming justice reform initiative, the audience applauded warmly. But beneath the applause was something else, a collective hope that the interview might soften, might steady itself back into safe territory. Joy leaned into her mic. The room tensed instantly. "So, Kim," she began too casually, "you talk a lot about helping people, empowering women, setting an example. And that's good. Admirable even. But don't you think some of your choices contradict that image?" The air snapped like a rubber band. Kim's breath caught. She didn't answer immediately. She simply stared at Joy, stunned that the moment of vulnerability they'd just witnessed hadn't deterred her from pushing again. Joy, Whoopi warned lightly, sensing the danger. But Joy pressed forward, the unfiltered side of her unraveling again. A lot of young girls follow you. Millions, really. And they copy everything: your looks, your lifestyle, your aesthetic choices. Do you ever worry that you're influencing them in a direction that's not exactly healthy? There it was. The loaded topic. The insinuation that had followed Kim for years. The audience murmured uneasily. Even the crew shifted their weight nervously. Kim straightened, her composure returning brick by emotional brick. "I'm not responsible for raising the world's daughters," she said softly but firmly. "I can inspire them. I can try to be positive. But I can't live my life based on every criticism thrown at me." Joy raised an eyebrow. "You're not responsible, but don't you market directly to them? Don't you profit from that influence?" Kim blinked slowly. Her voice lowered. "I market to everyone. Women, mothers, teens, men. But that doesn't mean my life is a blueprint." Joy leaned back, folding her arms. "It kind of becomes one when you're Kim Kardashian." Kim's eyes flashed with something deeper, something raw. "Joy, every step I take is analyzed. Every outfit, every decision, every mistake. I'm not perfect. I've never claimed to be. But I grow. I evolve. And I try to be better. Isn't that what matters?" Joy replied calmly. "It matters if people believe the growth is authentic." That did it. Kim's lips parted slightly, as if she'd been slapped. "You think I'm faking my life?" Joy shrugged. I think you curate your life. And that's okay. But don't pretend it's all real." The studio fell into a stunned hush. Kim exhaled, the breath shaky and heavy. "Of course parts of my life are curated. I'm not naive. But that doesn't mean my feelings are fake. My experiences are fake. My work is fake. Everything I've done, every late night, every tear, every risk, has been real." Joy didn't interrupt. She simply listened, her expression unreadable. Kim continued, her voice trembling again, but not from weakness this time, from frustration. "Do you know what it's like to constantly defend your humanity? To fight for people to see you as more than a headline or a meme? You think I don't know what people say about me? You think I haven't heard every insult imaginable?" Her voice cracked. "But I still show up. I still work. I still try to make a difference." The audience applauded, softly at first, then louder, warming the room with sudden support. Joy inhaled deeply, as if trying to choose her next words with surgical precision. But whatever she was about to say was cut off when a member of the audience suddenly called out, "We love you, Kim." The studio erupted in cheers. Kim's eyes softened, glistening again, but this time not from pain, from relief, from being seen, even briefly, through compassion instead of criticism. She smiled weakly and whispered, "Thank you." But Joy wasn't completely done. Not yet. She leaned forward, softer now, but still firm. "Look, Kim, I may be tough. I may push hard. But I'm doing my job. People want answers, real ones." Kim met her eyes. "And I'm giving them. But you keep trying to twist them into something else." Joy bristled, but only for a moment. "Okay, then let me ask you this, honestly. Do you ever wish you could step away from all of this? The fame, the scrutiny, the pressure?" A surprising question. A human one. Kim didn't answer immediately. She looked down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was fragile, almost childlike. "Every day," she whispered. The room froze. Kim continued, staring at her hands. "There are mornings where I wake up and wonder what it would be like to just be invisible. To go outside without cameras. To live a life where everything I am isn't broken apart and judged. But that's not my reality. And I've made peace with that. Mostly." Joy's gaze softened. The veneer of criticism melted, revealing something unexpected: empathy. "You wouldn't trade it though, would you?" she asked quietly. Kim looked up. Really looked. "I'd trade the pain. I'd trade the pressure. But not the purpose." Joy nodded slowly, as if absorbing the answer. It was the first moment since the interview began where the two women weren't clashing. They were simply two human beings trying to understand each other. Then someone in the control room whispered too loudly through a headset, "Wrap this segment in 90. Whoopi clapped her hands lightly. "All right, ladies. Let's take a beat. Next question." But before she could continue, Joy spoke again, unexpectedly. "Kim, despite everything I've said today, I want you to know something." Kim tilted her head cautiously. Joy's voice lowered. Strong people break too. Doesn't make them weak. It makes them human. The audience murmured, touched. Kim swallowed hard. Thank you. I think. Joy cracked a faint smile. Don't get used to it. The studio finally relaxed. A collective exhale. A fragile peace, but peace nonetheless. But underneath that surface calm. The cameras, the whispers, the millions watching. The narrative was already brewing. Kim Kardashian crying on The View. Joy Behar pushing too far. A confrontation that wasn't over yet. And when the final segment began, the real fallout was about to ignite. The final segment of the show began with a strange stillness, as though the entire studio was holding its breath. Kim Kardashian sat composed, though the fragility in her eyes remained. Joy Behar, usually unshakable, seemed unusually measured, her earlier fire now simmering beneath a surface of conflicted restraint. The co-hosts kept exchanging glances, not sure whether today's episode would end in resolution or one last eruption. The camera operator cued the hosts with a silent hand gesture. The red light flashed, and suddenly, every emotion in the room became amplified. Whoopi led the moment carefully. "We've had a very emotional discussion today," she said with a steady voice. "But before we wrap up, Kim, is there anything you want to say? Anything that wasn't said?" Kim inhaled deeply. A small breath at first, then a steadier one as she gathered the pieces of herself that had been scattered across the last hour. "Yeah," she said. "There's something." The audience leaned forward. "I know people see me as this brand, this public figure, this phenomenon," she continued. "But behind everything you see online or on TV, I'm still a person. I came here today to share my work, my goals, my growth. I didn't come here to prove my worth. I shouldn't have to." Joy's gaze lowered, then lifted again slowly. Kim continued, her voice trembling but strong. "The world has built this idea that celebrities don't feel pain, that we're immune to hurt, immune to words. But that's not true. Not for me. Not for anyone." A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. "And sometimes," Kim said, "it's the people interviewing us, the people who are supposed to understand the pressure we live under, who make it harder." Joy's expression tightened, defensive, but hiding a flicker of remorse. Kim met her eyes directly. "You asked me some tough questions, Joy. And I get that. You have your job. But there's a difference between asking a question and cutting someone open." The audience gasped softly. One or two people muttered, "Wow." Joy shifted in her seat. "I wasn't trying to cut you open." Kim didn't break eye contact. "But you did." Joy exhaled sharply and sat back. It was unclear whether she was offended or simply absorbing the truth. Then, unexpectedly, Joy spoke again, but not with her usual sharpness. "Kim," she said quietly, "I know I can come off strong. Too strong. I've been doing this job for a long time. I poke, I prod, I challenge. And sometimes I cross a line I don't realize I'm crossing." The room softened instantly. Joy looked down at her hands. "I didn't think you'd break today. But you did. And I didn't feel good about that." The entire studio froze. Joy Behar was unraveling a vulnerability of her own. Not dramatic, not emotional, but honest. Kim watched her, confusion and caution mixing in her expression. Joy continued, "You're right. You're not a caricature, even though the world tries to make you one. And I shouldn't have added to that." The audience reacted with warm applause, small but genuine. Kim let out a breath that sounded like release. "Thank you," she said softly. But the moment of healing was short, because as Whoopi prepared to close the show, the conversation took one last sharp turn. A fan from the audience yelled out, "We love you, Kim. Don't let anyone tear you down." Kim smiled gratefully, but Joy, caught off guard, muttered into her mic, "Nobody's tearing her down. She's doing just fine." It was quiet, but it was picked up. Every camera, every microphone, every viewer heard it. Kim blinked. Something inside her flinched again. "Joy," she said softly, "you don't get to decide when I'm hurting." Joy froze. The audience murmured loudly. Kim's words were gentle, but filled with unmistakable truth. "You don't get to tell me when I'm allowed to feel pain, or when something hurts. I didn't come here to fight with you. I came here to speak. But instead, I felt attacked." Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Kim continued, her tone fragile yet fearless. "And even now you're telling me how I should feel. I'm tired of people doing that, of deciding who I am without ever listening to me." Joy's throat tightened. Her hand trembled slightly as she readjusted her mic. "Then tell me," she said quietly. "Who are you, Kim? Kim stared at her, surprised by the sincerity in the question. And for one raw, unfiltered moment, she answered without media polish, without cameras dictating her expression. "I'm someone trying," she whispered. "Trying every single day to be better. For my kids. For myself. For the world I want to leave behind." The audience erupted into the loudest applause of the entire show. Even the co-hosts seemed moved. Sarah wiped a tear discreetly, Sunny nodded with pride, and Whoopi looked at Kim like she finally understood her in a way the world rarely did. Joy sat still, silent, but not dismissive this time, not mocking. She simply looked at Kim, really looked, and something in her face softened completely. The producer signaled frantically, "Wrap up, wrap up, wrap up." Whoopi finally stepped in. "We want to thank Kim Kardashian for joining us today. This conversation was tough, it was emotional, and it was real. And that's what The View is all about." The audience cheered. Kim smiled, tired but genuine. "Thank you for having me." As the cameras zoomed out, Kim and Joy exchanged one last look. An uneasy truce formed not from agreement, but from hard truth. And then the show ended. But the story did not. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips of Kim's tears. Clips of Joy's harsh questions. Clips of the confrontation. Clips of Kim saying, "You don't get to decide when I'm hurting." Hashtags trended globally. Hashtag Kim on The View. Hashtag Joy went too far. Hashtag Kim deserved better. Hashtag The View drama. Hashtag emotional Kim. News outlets published headlines within seconds. Fans defended Kim fiercely. Critics dissected Joy's behavior. Commentators argued whether Kim's breakdown was vulnerable or strategic. The internet was on fire. And by nightfall, the entire world had chosen sides. Kim Kardashian had not just appeared on The View. She had ignited a cultural debate, raw, emotional, unforgettable. And every flame of that fire had been caught on camera. Now that you've watched this story unfold, we want to hear from you. Do you think Joy crossed the line? Did Kim show strength by being vulnerable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to Talk Flair for more explosive, dramatic, and deeply human celebrity stories just like this one. Don't miss what's coming next.